let everybody hop on here. We just wanted to, number one, thank everybody for signing up for the pre-con. We have set records with how many attendees we have on. We crushed Evan and Ryan from last year, so we doubled their number. And we know it's because we're so bald and so beautiful. So we appreciate you, and Chris and Ryan. Yes. Chris and Ryan, yeah. Yes. What did I say?
Evan and Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Chris and Ryan.
It's all
Chris and Ryan. Blocked Chris out. I don't remember his name. But today, we're going to keep logging people in. Evan and I have some pretty good stuff we're going to share here. You know how much I love the sound of paper. We have basically, from the power, stability, and rotation component that we have, there's like a regressive idea of some plyometrics, implement tracking, and stability that we're going to kind of go through today, and then some corrective pieces to kind of work with that. So basically it's like a mini pre-con that we're going to do tonight. So it's we wanted to deliver some good content, some good bonus. Definitely make this, 45, 50 minutes, however long we go, worth your time. We appreciate you being here. And we want you to be focused on answering or asking questions that we can answer for you. We've had 4 questions submitted already. We've got those up on the PowerPoint. We'll show you guys here in a little bit. And we're very excited to answer those, but we would rather get live questions on here. So you have questions while we're going, throw them in the chat, and we will definitely get to you guys there. I'm going to bring up our PowerPoint here. Oops, we're one stage ahead here. You see our little intro for today. And Evan and I, number one, very excited for tomorrow, the 4 hours we are going to get to spend together. It's going to be a good time. We have a ton of content to teach. I have 18 plus exercises to show, plus all progressions and regressions on either side. So you're probably going to get upwards of 50 exercises we're going to put in, plus 20, 30 correctives. So we're gonna deliver as much content as we can to you guys, plus some really great templates, some mock workouts, progression, all of our programming component to it. Like, we really want to make it a very interactive piece for you guys, so you can start to implement this stuff right away. All right, so Evan and I, if you don't, we're going to do a very, very quick introduction. 90 seconds. Ev, you want to start off? Let's go ahead and get a quick intro.
Dr. Evan Osar from, as I mentioned, Chicago via Wisconsin now. We moved to Wisconsin last year. My wife Janice and I, we run a clinic out of Chicago, downtown Chicago, not too far from the heart, right down in there, Chicago. And we specialize in training people pre and post surgery. And my wife is a post-surgical specialist, and we do a lot of training of different ages. However, the age group that's most near and dear, I started working at the East Bank Club of Chicago. It's the #1 money-making club in the country. And I started training the older adults, and I didn't know how to train them. So, I say that they found me, I didn't find them, and now I love training the older adults. And most of what I learn and what I teach is because of working with that population. They've taught me so much because I just realized how much I didn't know about training. So super excited to be here with you guys and share this time with one of my favorite people in the world, let alone the industry, as well as just all around great guys. So, and more importantly, to be here with you guys to share this information to help you succeed with your clients and attract more individuals that need, want, and will pay you for your expertise.
And I'm Robert Linkle, just outside Sacramento, California in Shingle Springs. Did own Be Stronger Fitness, which was down in Sacramento. And through all the COVID closures and the fires and everything else we had here in Sacramento and California, we ended up closing up shop, opening on 100% online, and kind of rebuilding our whole business and getting into the space that we are currently in, which is called the bunker. So our Be Stronger Fitness bunker, which now is the TOA bunker, training the older adult. My wife Keegan and I run all of our education programs through there, and we do train about 45 clients. They're online or in-house here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it here a little bit. I think I'm going to go first. Exercises and then correctives. Cool. So I'm going to dive in here and give you guys a couple of things that I like to do in terms of some plyometric, little body weight plyometric exercises we're going to dive into there. Hi, Jackie. Jackie's getting on here. And then we'll work on a little bit, something I call implement tracking, which is a really good fall prevention component. So we're going to dive into that. If you happen to have a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, racket ball, you want to do a couple of these exercises with us, I'm happy to have you join us and do that. And then we're going to do a little bit of band and some kettlebell work here at the end too. So we'll take you through those. And then when we finish that up, Evan's going to come through and take you through a couple of his correctives and some of his movement patterns. And then we'll finish up with some of our questions from there. Sound good? The chat is open and we are ready to field any questions as we're going along here. It can be on anything and everything that we have to share with you guys. Business talk, anything, you let us know, we got you. All right, so our first one in here is body weight plyometric components. So when you think about plyos for the older population, we think a lot about, well, we think of plyos in general, we think a lot about bounding, skipping, jumping, box jumps, and some of your more dynamic or explosive lifts like the snatch, the clean and jerk. Knowing that we don't have the abilities with a lot of these clients to do that and they wouldn't really benefit from that, there's some kind of low-level plyometric exercises that we can do that are really beneficial for our clients. So I had a lot of my little more experienced clients, but 70, 80, a couple of them in their early 90s doing these lifts with me online the other day. Knowing that they're online, we're gonna have a trust in their ability. Some of these are a little bit more advanced, but I do wanna share them with you guys. Make sure your clients, if you're doing them in person, or if you're gonna do them online, they either have a spotter or they have somebody there with them. If they take a fall or something like that, they're not stranded and you're sitting here looking at a screen going, oh crap, what do we do now? So always be careful with that. First one is what we call a drop squat. Drop squat starts in a squat position. And basically as it sounds, we are going to dynamically or quickly drop our feet into a defense position. If you're a basketball player, defense, we'll have them drop down and then either step back in or jump back in, okay? So a little bit of tilt here at the hip. We're going to lower that center of mass, and when they're ready, we're going to have them drop, step, step, drop, step, step. Now you can hear my feet. I'm banging a little bit. I want you to hear how quickly I'm moving my feet, but ideally we want them to move slow. Kind of, I use the term ninja quick. So quick here, step, step. I can barely hear it every time we go. And I like the hands. I want them to open their hands up, get their chest up, be in that good position. Was somebody asking me a question there? You guys good? Are we hearing me okay? Okay, I hope so. All right, so we're gonna drop to our defensive position, step in. Now, if we wanna take that a little more dynamic, a little more explosive, we can drop and jump back in. Drop, jump back in, drop, jump back in. Now, we wanna dual task this and ask our clients to do it on a response. You can have them turn the other direction or you can walk about and you'll call it. So they're in position and you'll say drop and they drop and you go return, drop, return, however they want to go. So now they've got an auditory response they're waiting for or listening for, okay? So that's just a basic drop squat. An advanced movement from that is a pop squat. And I like to do the pop squat from the sit to stand position. We're going to start what I call dead strength. Solid starts or dead starts. Basically, we're taking away all potential kinetic energy, all of the pre-stretch, right? That stretch of the hamstring, stretch of the quad, stretch of the glute, that's going to help me fire up out of my squat. Can you get a mute for me up there? Sure. As we come down, we're going to take all that potential away and basically encourage the client to come up as quick as they can. And as they get airborne, to leave the ground just enough like slide paper under their foot. So I'm in my squat position. We're going to push the knees apart, keep their chest up here nice and tall, and we want to shoot up like a rocket. Okay, we're just going to fire up, little pop, and return. I want to get as full to extension as we can. We're basically standing at the top. Let them start short, and as they get more confident, we can start to get a little bit more vertical, a little bit higher through the hip. A couple good pieces you have from this is that we're asking for an immediate activation with no neuromuscular preemptive strike, right, of the musculature, where it's going to get this stretch to fire. So these dead starts really get people strong out of like these deeper squats, but explosive because you've got to leave the ground just that little bit. You're going to get some clients that are going to want to start jumping. And we're like, that's not the point. The idea is to make this a vertical thing. It's just get off the ground quick enough or high enough to just leave it a little bit, but I want it quick, right? So I want them to get into a position where they're firing up here quick and return. Firing up here quick and return. And every time we come back to a dead stop, every time back down here, it's not a touch and go, they're not bouncing. Completely shut it off, re-engage, and then fire. A couple of the issues you'll see, I'm turning this way just to show you don't have people sit on the bench like this, is when they engage and like, oh, you gotta hurry, you'll see this collapse right away. You'll see the arms and the body, momentum shoot forward, all kinds of little cheats where they're really gonna try to hurry this, where I'd rather have them go wider in the knees, push hard through their feet, up tall, and just power up through this guy and return. Start up a little higher, maybe on a 20-inch plyo box or on a bench here with a couple AirX pads. And as they get more confident, a little stronger, start working down a little bit. And eventually you're gonna find a point where they bog, meaning this, they go, they can get through it. And then they get through it. It's just a little too deep then. And we got one more popping on there. Next button. So that's your sit to stand. Now our scissor switch, this one's a little tricky because we have a dynamic piece and then we have a step piece from it. So let's do the step and then we'll get to the dynamic one. As simple as a piece of chalk, drawing a line, or if you have lines on your floor already where you've rolled the floor at, just have them step straddle over that line. And it's simple, step in and switch, step in and switch. And we want to think of it as like a two-step pattern, two-step as in the dance, where they're gonna switch quick one, switch quick two, switch quick one, switch quick two. Quick switch variations, they're forward leaning a little bit. I want them heavy on the front leg, and I want them to work on this transition where if they were doing like a dynamic step up, they would get a little bit airborne on the box and switch feet. So what you can do is with this switch step, is have them take the same space on the floor of their foot. Like if I were to outline my foot, like my foot died and I outlined it, right? I would want to switch my foot in that same spot, switch it in the same spot, switch it in the same spot. Ultimately, we're going here, scissor switch, scissor switch. Very, very short little jumps. I don't need a ton of impact, but enough to get them to leave the ground. One more there up. And working that center of mass, lowering, dynamic up, dynamic soft back to the ground. All these little quick responses, quick actions, really help our clients learn what it's like to react and respond quickly. So if they're stepping lateral or backwards and they catch a toe, they step on their own shoelace, something that happens fast, they can respond and step, and they're used to it. Where I like a lot of the drop actions, I'm going to show you a drop step action in a minute, where we have 70% of our falls are going to occur backwards or off to the corner, 45-degree angles. And this lateral or sagittal plane actions here, where we fall out, we need to practice getting to those positions, okay? All right, now let's get into some of our implement actions here. I have a couple different balls to show you. My first one is a indoor lacrosse ball. Look how squishy that is, okay? It feels really good on the hand. If you miss it, you don't jam a finger or hurt yourself. Regular lacrosse ball, much harder. I can barely squish it at all. And then a black one, this is a brain health with our guy, our Rye guy, Ryan Glatt. And the reason I like to progress to the black one is because it blends in with the floor. It's much harder for me to track this than either of these guys, right? So with implement tracking, very quickly to put this, we are an implement in space moving about. This is an implement in space moving about. We have acceleration of an implement. We have anticipation of where that implement is going to be. We have deceleration to either catch that implement, and then you have to change the direction and redirect it. So it's coming in, I'm preparing, I'm accelerating, I'm anticipating where it's going to be as it comes in. I'm going to gather that energy, I'm going to redirect it, and I'm going to propel it. Same thing with my body. I'm going to gather my energy, I'm going to propel my energy forward, I'm going to anticipate where to put my foot, I'm going to gather that energy and do it again. And so on a very small scale, mastering implement tracking, throwing, playing catch, is a great way for us, especially with our older pops, to work on, in a small scale, some fall prevention techniques. As this is trajected through space, we will traject ourselves about. So we want to start with real simple actions, just a dribble, a throw, and a scoop catch Open hand where the ball will fall into it. Anticipation of where that ball is going to be, I'm going to put my hand right under. Once we master that, throw and strike, throw and strike. We want to directly strike the ball every time we come down, aggressive anticipation, go after it. We start to master just the basic dribble, we're going to move and progress from there.
Hey guys, could you just mute yourself? I thought I muted everybody, but I just still hear a little bit of feedback, so just make sure you're muted, please. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. All right, so the 60s is the one I have listed on here for you. And this is how we go with the 60. Our wind's really picking up here. It feels nice, but we got this a little bit of a windstorm coming in. So right hand, you're gonna throw and catch with my right foot forward for 20. I'm gonna go to my left hand, throw and catch for 20, and then crisscross, throw and catch for 20. There's my set of 60. I'm gonna switch my feet and repeat it again. So really I've got 120 throws we're gonna do. These are great like active recovery drills to do. You just did your deadlifts and your rows and your step ups and your pullovers. You're like, you guys got 90 seconds. Everybody grab a ball, give me your 120s, let's go. And they're like, okay, left foot forward, and you'll see them go running after, oh, I screwed up. They gotta go get it, and they go to bend over. And you're like, hey, Rob, is that the way to properly pick up a ball? And they go, oh no, let me displace my hips and work on my proper pickups, okay? So every little bend over, every little hinge, every trajectory of the ball, all of these matter. Okay, moving this one now, let's say we get to a point where they're mastering the 60. And you're like, I can do this all day. We go up to a more difficult ball. Okay, there's a little more bounce, a little more pep, it's a little harder. Well, I want to progress this. I'm gonna start my dribbles, and I'm gonna do a 1, 2, 3 forward, 1, 2, 3 back. Okay, 3 going forward, and 3 going back. And you as the coach can say switch, and they have to switch hands as we go, and switch as they're going forward. And so now we've got a little dual tasking going on, switch, okay? And if you really want to take things to a new level, we go pirate style, jar. One eye closed. That really screws with them. You'll see people grab it, nothing. Like it's completely gone. They can barely get it there. So I got my one eye closed as I'm working through there. Okay, all these little things work. Lower center mass, you see me forward and back. I'm working on finding, anticipating, accelerating, all this little practices to help us do this with our bodies, ourselves in space as we move about. All right, so there's our implements. To finish up from my end here, I have something called a drop step lunge to the inline position, okay? This is going to be a little bit more of a stability and balance piece for you. I want my client to use a band that is going to give them enough assistance where they can still move through the range of motion, but it's not exactly easy for them, right? I want to have some engagement, some work from here. So if they pick too big of a band, the band will just pull them off the ground. So let's start with like a 1/2 inch band. I'm going to hold my tension, row the band in so I can feel the help. And then when I drop step, instead of drop stepping staggered, hip to hip, I'm going to drop step in line like I'm on a balance beam, okay? And I'll show you this from the side here in just a second. So I'm going to engage my band, my drop step, in line, return. Drop step, in line, return. So it's like I'm on the balance beam. I'm trying to engage my band here to where when I get to the most difficult portion of the lunge, here, I'm trying to change direction. The band is thus pulling me back up. It's assisting me. And you notice the short action of the lunge, we're doing that on purpose. My traditional drop step gets me back here into my 90-90. When we go to our inline, it's a little shorter. And I even like to try to cue heel to knee for those that are capable. This is a very difficult action to do. And that's where we want to use that band to help them engage and change. We think about all those backward steps to rescue our falls. Big balance action here for us. All right, practice into that one. One of my favorites is just a hinged take it, leave it. So I'm going to get into a position with my client where they can kickstand or single leg RDL. Kickstand the hip back, all the way down, take their implement, kickstand back, leave it. Down, take it, down, leave it. If I can't get that range of motion without rounding, sacrificing the back, put a couple plates under there and bring it up to them, right? I want to find a good hinge position where they can master this. Eventually I get to a point where they're capable, single leg RDL, woo, all the way down, take it, all the way down and leave it. The higher the leg in the back, the better. As we come back, there we go. Think of their body as a teapot. The higher you lift this handle in the back, the more the spout will tilt. And if I can work that high action, hinging over to pick up anything, socks and dryer sheets and any pens off the floor. If I'm a golfer and I'm setting my ball, setting up the tees, picking up a ball after I putt, you're doing that at least 36 times, right? Every time you go out golfing, think of all those hinges that we're doing incorrectly, all these split variations that we can get them a little bit better in position. All right, my very last one is a lateral tension squat. Very simple. I want to band over the top. I'm going to step out where the band is applying a lateral tension to me, and then I'm going to squat. And in the act of doing this, the coach, you want to have a video or a mirror in front of them where they can watch their hips as they're coming down. Because what you're typically going to see, imagine my band is over there and the band is pulling me, you're going to see this little side wink of the hip pulling to that band. And you're like, hey, I got to engage and pull this guy here and find my straight alignment right down the pipe, okay? So good engagement here, anticipate in. Work this displacement of the hip against that tension. Don't let the band win. Work in some different angles of attack. You can go 90, you can do 45, you can do 135. Change those angles a little bit where they're getting pulled in different directions. And just think of the displacement and that overcoming the band tension. Great for finding different angles where they're going to have to step or anticipate to assist them in moving quickly. Okay, finding odd staggered stances, but being very comfortable in doing so. If any time I lose my foot position, if my first reaction is to lower my center of mass and react with a good anticipated step in the right position, instead of stepping, accelerating my fall, I just do one proper step and stop. I prevented my fall from happening. Hopefully, with proper resistance training, a pretty good amount of weight being lifted, and a good foundation of strength being built, if I do fall down, I survive the fall without breaking anything because I'm dense. I've got enough muscle, my bones are resistant and dense enough where nothing breaks. Maybe I just get some bruises, my ego's hurt, but I get up from that and I survive it and I can move on. Or we get them in the right positions where they anticipate and stop themselves from even being in that position. We know percentage-wise that the likelihood of their quality of life going down drastically is going to occur by at least 70%. And at least 70% of those people are going to die from that fall, from the poor quality of life, the limited quality of where they're going to be. There's a mental mindset of giving up, all the way down to the actual act of breaking their hip, cutting a femoral artery or something along those lines, and literally bleeding out and dying from the fall. Any kind of fall actions after the age of 70 is going to be bad news for the majority of people. So this makes that demographic the most vulnerable, and ones we need to work with the most at getting them comfortable, being wider base, stronger, capable of moving in any direction, confident that they can do this. But instead, we give them a cane, we give them a walker, we tell them take small steps, and we tell them to keep everything down in front of them and be careful and don't overstretch and don't lift anything heavy. God forbid, don't put your arms over your head and don't try to move quickly. All the things that we're telling you they should be doing. Why do we train them like they're dying already, like they're hurt already? Instead, we should be training them like they're going to be athletic their whole life. I'd rather them die at 102 in their sleep, able and capable, and be a happy, comfortable person than live for 30 years with all this medication and all these injuries and all these limitations. So it's really where all this comes back to it for us. seeing my parents go through this right now. I've had 3 hip replacements. I've had cancer twice. I've had 16 surgeries between my hips and my back. I'm like the physically oldest 40-year-old you'll ever meet. And all those experiences have taught me that the quality of life and our enjoyment of every day is much greater than living longer and miserable and full of medications and not moving. I'd rather die at 70 and live like I'm living than make it to 100 bedridden. Okay? There's just no quality in that for me. Ideally, I make it to 100 and I stay mobile, right? All right, enough preaching from me. Right on my time here for the Edmeister to come over and take you guys through some of his. Any questions on anything I just went on, throw it in the chat and we'll get you guys at the end, okay? All right. Thank you, my man.
Awesome. So Robert did an amazing job talking about power and how that applies to the older adult and why it's so important. We've got obviously way more tomorrow. So I was going to talk about correctives for power. However, since this is a bonus session, I want it to be really bonus for you guys and talk about something I've actually never really taught much at all. And as Robert was discussing walking and more importantly, what happens when clients don't walk well or control walking and falling, let's talk about gait. Let's talk about walking because there's very little out there about how do you actually improve how someone walks. And one of the things Robert and I were talking about earlier today is that concept that a lot of your clients hear from their medical professionals. Hey, don't do rotation training. You shouldn't rotate your spine. You shouldn't do anything that rotates you. And I'm like, then how do you walk? How do you function in most of everyday life? When you think about the thing that decreases, there's 2 things that will decrease your client's quality of life faster than anything else. Number 1 is their breathing. I'm going to share some research with you tomorrow that talks about the way your client pulmonary function, which is breathing, right? Pulmonary function is related to all-cause mortality. If you don't breathe well, you will dramatically decrease quality of life. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Number 2 is how fast and how well, how optimally you walk. The more optimal, more efficient you walk, the more active you're going to be, the better quality of life. When you think about the 2 things your clients do the most inefficiently, the most suboptimally, that's breathing and walking. And very little training is spent breathing and or training walking. So we're going to talk about breathing tomorrow, train that. Janice has a whole entire session on Saturday regarding breathing. Let's address walking. Walking is really controlled rotation. Because if we break down the gait cycle from the time one heel strikes the ground to the time that next heel, I should say the same heel strikes the ground again, it's all about rotation. So from the time our heel strikes the ground, the right side, so we'll stay with the right side just to make it simple, right side heel contacts the ground, your pelvis is relatively rotating towards that leg. And then in order to progress the opposite leg, the left leg forward, then you have to counter rotate to essentially load the opposite leg. So it's a rotation towards this internal rotation of this hip, and then it's an external rotation of this hip, this right hip, to get the weight to the left leg. Now, how does that relate to your older clients? Just to make it simple, stay around the pelvis and the hip complex. What do our older clients tend to do when they walk? They do not walk in a relatively straight line, rotating around a relative axis. And again, it's not exactly on an axis, but relatively speaking, it is. What do they tend to do? When they step, they lean. They either lean this way or they collapse out this way with their pelvis. So they can walk like this, where they collapse out to one side, and those individuals will tend to have pelvis and maybe low back issues as well. And also those are your knee clients, because your knee clients will compensate when your pelvis goes out this way, the knee will go valgus that direction, because you're trying to equalize, they're trying to equalize center of mass over top the base of support. So the more you shift your pelvis this way, the more something has to shift this way to compensate for that shift of the pelvis. So those will be a lot of your knee pain clients, because the knee is being overloaded by what's not happening up at the pelvis. The other way your clients will compensate is when they step onto that one leg, instead of rotating, they'll side bend. They know they're not stable on single leg support. We'll talk about that in a moment. So they start to side bend to that direction. So one of the assessments we do with our clients, basically all our clients, and this is a great virtual assessment as well, is just single leg stance. The reason you're looking at single leg stance is to see how well your client aligns and controls. Because when your client stands on single leg, because again, gait walking is double leg support to single leg support until that other side comes down. So there's a big section of the gait cycle that's single leg support. So you need dynamic support. So it's easy to look at your clients and say, how well do they stand and align that cylinder, the rib cage over top of the pelvis. So this is your cylinder right here. Then how well do they align and control the head and neck? And how well do they align and control the hip, knee, ankle, and foot? And then compare it side to side, because you'll see almost all population, regardless, athletic population, your younger population, and your older population, there's a difference with how they load on each side. We'll take a look at that on each other here in a moment. So single leg support looks at how well does a client transfer their load onto a single leg support, and then compare it to the other side, how well do they control on that side, okay? So what we want to look at next, obviously, is single leg support, because when we single leg support with gait, as I mentioned, you go from rotating internally to external rotation. So it happens very quickly, but there's a single leg support. First, you want to see how well does your client load up onto that leg, then we'll look at rotation, okay? So one of the things we want to look at is how well does your client rotate in the standing position, which is another reason why we do the standing hip rotation. So we're looking at how well does a client actually load over top of hip joint. Can they actually get their pelvis to move that direction well over top of the hip joint? Because if they can't rotate to one side, what's going to happen when they walk? If you're stepping and you can't rotate, you have to do something. So you could side bend to get around that lack of rotation. You could rotate from your knee around the side that you don't hip rotate so well. So when you sort of think about where your client experiences chronic discomfort, low back and or knee are the most common areas. A lot of that has to do with how well are they loading, actually loading. So how well do they suspend, and how well do they rotate their cylinder around that hip joint, okay? So let's do this together now. You guys have been sitting here for a little while. Let's just stand up. Stand up, put your feet together. So feet completely together, hands on your pelvis. And let's compare rotation side to side, because you'll see one side, you likely have limited rotation. So rotate to one side, come back to center, rotate to the other side. And you can see on me, rotation to the right side, easy, no problems, no limitations. Come back to center, always square up. Come back to center and square up. Then rotate left, much more limited here. It just stops, like it just doesn't go any further. So there's some limitation here in my left hip. Now, what your clients will often do, they'll be like, yeah, I don't feel any difference. And if I do it this fast and I don't stop in the middle, I don't feel any difference. But what you see, if you watch me closely, if I slow it down, you'll see me shifting, flexing, and you'll see me shifting off that vertical axis. I start to shift my pelvis out to the side. And you'll notice this when you watch somebody walk, even though it's happening so much faster. So very simple, easy assessment. Note your more limited side, because we're going to work on that. Now, if your client doesn't notice any difference, because some of your clients are like, yeah, I don't feel any difference. And if you're watching them virtually, like we still see a lot of clients virtually, I can't pick that up with my eye if they're doing it fast and or the lighting's not good. There's lots of stuff in the background. So an easier way to do that, to assess rotation, is now, let's go staggered stance. So now I'll do it from this side. Put your right leg just a little bit in front of your left leg. So basically heel to toe. So now your staggered stance, hands back on your pelvis. Now rotate your pelvis to that side, because you want to see how well do you internally rotate. How well do you load that pelvis? So again, very easy on my right side. Now we're going to go left side. So now go heel to toe. Now go left side. Yeah, much more limited. Can't get over to my left side. And again, this is where I tend to have a little more clicking in my knee. Every once in a while, I get a little pinch in my ankle on that side. So all the things I experience, again, no real pain. I can do most things. But when I'm doing dynamic things, I notice not so stable on that left side as well as I am on the right side. And you likely notice something different side to side in yourself. So very simple, easy assessment to do. Now, let's look at thoracic rotation, right? Actually, let's look at counter rotation, okay? Because what our clients need to do is, like I said, they need to step, rotate, and then counter-rotate that direction. So now, let's put that right leg forward again. So let's go heel to toe. And again, if your clients are real unstable like this, you can always go a little bit wider. You're gonna get the same result. Hands on the pelvis. Now look at your external rotation. And again, super easy for me, going external rotation on that right side. And you wanna keep the kneecap relatively facing forward. So this is not, if you watch my knee, that's not external rotation. That's rotation of the knee. That'll tear your knee up very quickly. So kneecap stays straight facing forward and rotate just from the hip. Again, super easy for me to do that on that side. Now switch sides. So left leg forward, right leg back. And again, you can go a little bit wider if your client is real unstable. And now go the opposite way. And again, just not as smooth. It's not as easy. Get a little block on that left side, okay? So now you've got some really awesome and amazing assessments just by looking at single leg stance and looking at rotation, just from standing with both feet down and with stagger stance. And hopefully you've picked something up, okay? Now, let's do, how do we work on that? How do we improve that? One of the most simple things, you guys have heard of the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. That's 100% true. However, people will say things like, if you want to improve rotation, you have to train rotation. And I will say that that's not entirely true. Because I'm going to show you here that you don't need to train rotation as we define it in the transverse plane here to actually improve it. What you need to do is stop where you're gripping, number one, that's stopping you from rotation. So one of the rules we have in our certification is the number one rule to changing any habit, okay? There's actually a few rules. Number one, you have to identify the habit. The habit or create awareness around what you're doing, that's the problem that you're trying to address. So the first thing is to address or become aware of the habit you're trying to change. For example, if you don't have any money, but you're making money, you're like, well, the habit you probably have is you're spending too much money. So you have to stop spending so much money. Create awareness around that. Number two is then you start to create the habits that help you improve what you're trying to improve. So one of the things we need to improve on our clients is how well they're aligning and controlling their joint. Because the number one thing that will stop your clients from being able to optimally rotate is when they're not aligning and controlling their joints. So put your one hand like this. So create a ball joint. So this is the femoral head of your hip joint. Now put your other hand like this. This is the acetabulum of your pelvis. In order to have optimal hip rotation, you have to keep the ball centered in the socket. You have to be able to move the pelvis over top or move the ball in the socket. When we're doing our assessments here, we're moving the pelvis over top the femoral head. A lot of our hip rotation assessments are done lying down, and you get a lot of good information from there, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't show you what people are doing when they're actually loading or loading with weight bearing, which is why we reinforce our assessments by looking at what they do when they're lying down on the floor, but we're first initially looking at where is the restriction when they're actually loading, all right? So you found the side that you're more restricted. Got mine left side, both internal and external rotation. So it's easy for me to like, all right, I'll just address the left side. So for some clients, you may need to address internal rotation on one side and external rotation on the opposite side. So it's a little bit opposite depending on what your client's restriction is. So let's just take the side of internal rotation restriction, because that's the side that's going to make your client most challenged, okay? So now, let's go. Long spine, stack your rib cage to the best of your ability. So when I say stack your rib cage, most of your older clients, they're kyphotic, their pelvis is forward like this. That will also make you lose rotation real quick, okay? So get them as long as possible, okay? Now, there's a couple different ways you can do what we're going to do right now. Number one is for some of your clients that are real unstable, you can actually sit them down. And you should sit them down. So again, same idea. You're going to elongate their spine, stack their pelvis, then hinge them so they're sitting on their sit bones. Focus on your tighter of your two sides. So my left side is going out forward. So my left leg is going straight forward. I'm staying nice and long here. And now it's a hinge forward so that you're moving your whole cylinder over top that forward leg, okay? Now I'm going to face forward so you see where I'm facing. So align, stack that cylinder, and then come down, Sit on your sit bones, okay? Move one leg straight out. So now my cylinder is square to that forward leg. Now I hinge forward. It's not a big hinge because again, most of your older clients, they don't have a lot of length in that posterior chain. Hence the reason they've lost rotation on that side. So just stay aligned, hinge forward. So I go back to the side here, hinge forward. Now breathe. Send your breath down to your lower pelvis and your abdomen. Breathe. Focus on releasing through the back side of your pelvis. Stay long. Keep breathing. Usually do 3 to 5 breaths and usually 3 to 5 sets. So let's do one more. We'll hinge forward. Stay nice and long. You're hinging the entire cylinder over top the femoral leg, or the femoral head of that forward leg, and then come back. So that's for your clients that don't have great balance or body awareness. For your clients that do have great body awareness, you can always do this from a standing position. Align, stack that cylinder, step back, then hinge. And again, the important component is keep that pelvis square. And when you're done with this, I want you to go home and film yourself because I want you to watch the line on my pelvis, on my shorts. So I love these shorts because they have a line. When you rotate forward efficiently, optimally, that line stays level. What you want to see is, does that pelvis start to rotate out that direction or kick out that direction? You want to make sure that pelvis and the entire cylinder is rotating over top that forward leg. And then come back up. And that is crazy challenging, especially for clients and on the side, you and I as well, to keep our cylinder square over top of the pelvis and get that optimal rotation. So now let's just check it out. Let's see if we created any change. So feet back together, hands on your pelvis. Rotate right, that was easy before, still really easy on this side. Left side, way smoother. Huge difference on my left side. It actually feels like I have a little bit of spring to that side. There's no more gripping on that side. Let's go split stance. So let's check the internal, external rotation. Internal rotation was good on this right side. External rotation was good, still good. Let's check the left side. Both were restricted on me before. There's my external, way easy. Like that's super easy. Like no restriction, feels awesome now. And same thing on that side. And let's check single leg stance. So go single leg stance right side. That was easy before, it actually feels easier now. And it's probably easier because this hip flexion feels a lot easier to bring up. And now left side was a bit challenged, and now just easier. Less weight shift, just easier for me to maintain single leg stance. So that's how you start to work with your correctives to improve hip rotation. And then tomorrow we'll discuss how do you add in thoracic rotation, because again, part of what's driving hip issues are what's happening up here at the thorax. We're going to address that tomorrow. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me hear your feedback. Would you learn about gait? Would you learn about yourself? And what take-homes can you take home from what Robert shared and what I shared with you? Obviously, we have way more information coming to you tomorrow.
For sure, yeah. Any questions you guys have, feel free to go ahead and fire away. Questions, we're happy to answer them. And we have just a couple of minutes here left to wrap up. Any questions? We're happy to hear from you guys. We'll go over a little bit about what we're going to cover tomorrow. We'll have a basic introduction when we come in. And then we're going to talk a bit about the basic formula of power production, the benefit of this. I'm going to dive into some program design pieces for you. 2 different strategies in how you can implement power training from lighter loads moving quicker or from release drills. So we'll dive into that a little bit. We'll talk about waffles. If you don't know what a waffle is, that'll be a surprise for you. We'll get to dive into that a little bit. And then Ev will share a little bit about
correctives. Again, we're going to look at the correctives and really how to train thoracic rotation. And it's much different than what the rest of the industry is doing, because too much of our industry is actually creating thoracic dysfunction. Because when they're taking their rib cage and jam it into rotation, you're actually creating short-term gains, which ultimately will create long-term dysfunction because you're pulling the rib cage in the wrong direction. So I'm going to share with you exactly how to create more optimal alignment, how to create suspension so that your clients can actually get optimal rotation on the axis so they improve their gait and a lot of the issues they're experiencing through their shoulders as well as down through their lower extremity.
We're going to look at a lot of the research that's out there currently, some of the suggestions that we agree with, some that we're on the fence with, some that are just not right at all. So we'll dive into that and give you guys some very good information to take home with you that will be actionable. We want to give you an action plan. We're going to give you examples and plenty of templates and progressions. I have 18 plus exercises, 15 or 20 plus correctives. I mean, we have so much to share. So we're really looking forward to it. The hard part is going to be keeping it all within that 4-hour window, which we're like, we love to give you guys a bonus and over deliver, but you guys are like, it's been 4 hours, bro. That's enough. Let's cut it. So that's what we thought, a little bonus. I'm like, I got too much to talk about. Let's do a bonus day. We really appreciate so many of you supporting us and hopping on and doing this. It's going to be an awesome event. We saw a couple comments, just thank yous and loves from everybody. I loved Robert's balls. Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Thank you. And I love mine too.
Hey guys, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a client, 80-year-old woman, who has severe sciatica on her left side. She's had a stimulator put in and internal. I wondered if you've had any experience with other clients. Her stimulator is not functioning and she gets in such pain, and she's such a trooper. She comes in, we do our functional aging workouts, walking patterns, balance workouts as much as we can. A lot of this I'm going to incorporate too. And it's really heartbreaking. She's borderline in tears when she comes in. She's so frustrated. Have you got any, I know that's a big question, loaded question. There's not a simple answer for that, but have you or any of my other colleagues here had any experiences with something like that? I mean, does this thing need to be taken out? Something's pressing on her nerves.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've had clients that have had that, and usually by the time you get a stimulator, you've had pain for a long time. And there's multiple issues going on with a client. I mean, probably severe spinal stenosis. And I think a lot of doctors, and again, I can't speak to your client specifically, they don't know what to do because they don't have a great strategy. And when clients go to physical therapists, and no disrespect to physical therapists or other chiropractors, a lot of them have pretty generic protocols. And when the client fails, they resort to pain management. Pain management is your cortisone injections, your stimulators, and things like that. And pain meds and opioids, and that's where some of our addictions came from. You know, our society's addictions. So unfortunately, it's hard to say. I'm going to tell you what we do with some of our clients that actually works well. I'm not saying this is appropriate for your client. When you think about your clients that are older, I think you said, was she 80? 80, yeah, 80 years of age, they're obviously very compressed. So their rib cages are almost sitting on their pelvis. So if there's something you can do, if you take a lacrosse ball and...
Where are my balls? Here they are.
Where's your balls? Give me your balls. Let me give you. So, and you get them to release their QL. Again,
yes.
You have to be real careful about how you release it. Usually it's lying down, and their knees will be bent, so let me just lie on this bench here. And basically what you're going to have them do is, and again, it has to be appropriate for your clients, stay off that lowest rib. But again, I'm telling you what we do with our clients. Don't do this to your client. I'm just giving you what we do. So it's here, lean to the side, then lean back on it. It's not up and over on top of it. It's not rolling like a rolling pin like that. It's just lie on it, then breathe. Do that for several minutes on each side. So that's the first step. Get them to breathe. Breathing helps to create the self-traction to ultimately create space of getting that rib cage up and off that pelvis. So that way they're starting to create, like I said, it's literally traction from their lower back. So that way, if they have bone spurs, if they truly have bone spurs causing sciatica, which they probably do, or the openings where the nerves are coming out are compressed down, then it gives them a little bit more space so that they have the space to decrease some of that nerve compression. You got something to add?
Yes, sir. Yeah, to go right along with the idea of the traction, will you be an anchor for me, Ben?
Absolutely.
So you guys see I've got a band on just above the hip here. Now I have mine a little bit higher because I have fake hips. I have hip replacements. So you don't want to put the band low on the hip replacement. If I were to relax, technically I could have a position where the band would pull and displace my implant. So a little higher if they have hip issues. But the idea is I want to be able to hinge into a traction position just to give some relief. So you have a front anchor band in front that I can basically hold on to. I can hinge. I'll show you a side angle in a second. I can hinge and allow that band to pull back on me. And then if I want more, I pull the band and that increases my tension, right? That creates a longer traction. So I have, thank you, let that go there. So I have this guy displacing, turning the pelvis and pulling me long, and then I can control how much tension, how much traction I want by pulling in more, getting a greater tension that's going to elongate me more. I can start to hinge more and just let this out. I can just move forward and allow it to pull me even further. You can control this, but as with anything, if you go too far, it can hurt you. So you see people that do the boots or they do the tables, or they'll grab onto a pull-up bar and they'll dangle from that. Well, they were all compressed and packed down, and now they've elongated and they've gone too far. And now think of like a muscle in a clam. You're ripping that out. Now we're elongating here. It's too much load, relaxing too far. I would have just as much sciatic pain in my leg while dangling and trying to engage on some displacement hinges here. It would cause me more pain. In the moment, it would feel better, but as soon as I would let it go, that overextension would recoil on me and lock up, and it would just shoot back down my leg. It was terrible. So some of the best ones I had were tractions on the floor. I would lay down and have a band around my hip, and my PT, Dan, would pull on the band and it would traction my hip down. That was like the godsend. I was just like, dude, if you could just stay there for like an hour and let me sleep, that would be great, because I was just miserable. And this guy, these are the ones that you can kind of do on your own. And again, we are not saying do that. We're just telling you some of the things that we have done, I've done to help me with that. So
no, thank you very much. That'll be helpful.
Excellent. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. If you want to throw out a question, go for it. We've still got another 5 or 10 minutes. We're happy to answer. That's why we wanted to do it in a meeting format, not a webinar, so we could hear from you guys. So you can pop on here and ask questions. We're happy to field whatever you got for us. Business, therapy, correctives, home grooming, anything, any of it, anything you got.
Your beard smells good, man.
Thanks, brother. You do too.
It smells like cedar wood.
It smells like cedar wood. Thank you. That's the gunslinger. All right. Anybody else? We love all the comments, by the way. Thank you, everybody.
Guys. Truly appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we're glad you guys are enjoying it. And can't wait for tomorrow. It's going to be excellent.
We got a lot more.
All right. Last call. 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up, everybody. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you for spending time with us, and we will see you then. 4 hours. It's going to be awesome. Bring your notes, and we will get, actually, Celia already sent out the PDFs to everybody. So if you guys want to print those, write your notes on there. That'll be great. We'll have a lot for you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.